And I'd like to start off with sending you and your family my condolences. I am so sorry for your loss.
I appreciate it. I'm trying to hold it together. I am in between crying fits right now and just want to think about happy times with my grandfather.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
So this weekend, everyone got to watch the Clark sisters biopic.
Yes.
And I know that you had the pleasure of working with them. You also have a gospel background. So how did they influence your career?
Okay, so I haven't watched the movie yet because I was dealing with the death of my
Yeah.
grandfather on Sunday. And I told myself that hopefully tonight I'll be able to just take a couple of hours and watch it. I've been seeing everybody talk about it. I've been knowing about this movie since last year, so I've been super excited to know that it was coming out. When I heard that it was being done, I reached out to the sisters and spoke to them about it. And I'm just really excited that someone decided to tell their story. So shout out to Lifetime. They got it right this time. Shout
Yeah.
out to Misty. Yeah, no, seriously. Shout out to Misty. Shout out to
Queen
Queen
Latifah,
Latifah.
Lady
Shout out to
Mariah.
Mary. Like, who hasn't been influenced by the Clark sisters? So my connection to them is not just as, and I feel very privileged to say this, not just
Yeah.
as somebody that listened to their music, and because I'm a fan like everybody else. I'm a super fan. First of all, I am a super fan. But I also grew up Church of God in Christ, just like they did.
Yep.
My grandfather
In Queens.
was a Church of God in Christ bishop and jurisdictional prelate, and so my family was very heavily involved in that international, body of believers as well. I actually worked with them as a young kid. Their mom with Dr. Clark. My mother worked with Dr. Clark in the
Okay.
International Music Ministry. So as a kid, I participated in choir rehearsals and all of that kind of stuff
Yeah.
with them when they were young
Wow.
adults, and their mom when she was the director of the International Music Department for the Churches of God in Christ. So I've been like exposed to them my entire life, loving them forever. Twinkie, as a writer and an arranger, probably I have to say is my earliest influence when I arrange music. So when I arrange music and when I arrange vocal parts, she's the first person that I paid attention
Oh,
to,
wow.
really paid attention to, not
Yeah.
just listen to, but paid attention to the way she pieced harmonies together and made them so intricate and so full and so robust and different than anything else you were hearing out there. It was so cutting edge and so ahead of their time. I love those ladies. And then, so to grow up, right? To
Yeah.
grow up.
No, I'm enjoying
This is
this
good for my
story.
soul. This is good for my soul. So to grow up and then to have an opportunity as a professional in the industry to go back and work with them. I worked with the sisters when I covered You Brought the Sunshine on one of my albums, and all of the
Yes.
sisters were in the studio with me. But when Karen also went off to do her solo, to have a solo career outside of the sisters, I wrote Karen's first single just for me. So that was like, that was the most surreal, the most full circle moment, the most any of it. Like I joke with them all the time, and I'm adamant that I'm like the missing Clark. I'm the Clark that you didn't know about.
Well,
Love
I
them.
had the pleasure of watching you and the Clark sisters perform at the Essence Festival.
Yes.
So that was a
Yes.
one-time performance right there.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I'm really excited for them. Their story is a necessary story, just from the standpoint of we've had an opportunity to see who they are brilliantly as creators.
Exactly.
We've had an opportunity to see their faith walk and all of that. But I think, and I feel like I can say this because I'm not just an artist, I'm also a preacher's kid. And
Yes.
so I can speak from that standpoint that a lot of times, as Christians, as people who call ourselves saved, we mask our pain, we mask our hurt, we don't talk about it.
Yep.
And so we're able to help people with our music, but sometimes people need to know that we have things in common with them. Like we've experienced some of the same pain, we've experienced some of the same life. Help them feel better with our music and our creativity. But if we're going to go all the way biblical, the Bible tells us that we overcome not just by the blood of the Lamb, that's the spiritual side, but the human side is by the word of our testimony. So I can help you spiritually. I can pray for you and tell you, oh, you're going through it. Let me pray with you. Let me pray for you. But it helps you more if you know that my experience is common to yours and I came out on the other side of it. Okay. That's more of a help to you, really, to know that what you're going through is not something that no one else has ever lived through, and that you can make it. You can come out on the other side and you'll be okay. You know, because when you're in it, it really does feel like nobody's ever lived through what I've lived through. Everybody feels that way at some point.
Right.
But if you know that somebody's lived through what you lived through and they still came out on the other side and they were all right, they were better than all right, that helps more than anything.
So growing up as a preacher's child and breaking into the industry, how hard was that for you?
It was hard for me emotionally more than anything. So from the standpoint of just breaking in, people were trying to drag me in, not necessarily as an artist in the beginning, because everybody knows my story. I was not the girl that they were signing. They told me I didn't look like a superstar, and they loved my voice, but I didn't necessarily sound like what was selling either. The tones were softer, they were smoother. I had a rugged, hard, I was an R&B Clark sister. So, you know, everything for me was a, And at that time, when I was writing and doing all of this traveling with other artists and whatnot and doing background sessions, you had the sounds of Aaliyah, you had the sounds of Tamia, you had stuff like that. And it was beautiful, but I came from another place musically. So I laugh at it now. It hurt my feelings back then, but the adjectives used to describe me as an artist were too fat, too black, too loud. And so it was a difficult navigation, but once those barriers started to come down and people were looking at me as a possibility, the harder part of it for me was to break the news to my family, because
how was that?
that was interesting.
Right. Especially singing the song As We Lay.
Jesus. That was interesting because it was already a shift singing background for other people, like having that conversation. But then to sign a deal and to know that this was what I was going to be doing, not just traveling with someone else. And speaking of my grandfather, I was more concerned about him being disappointed than anything, because he was very old school, extremely old school. And in his mind, you singing, it needs to be in somebody's church somewhere. I don't know what you're thinking, but that's what your voice is for. So it took some time and some massaging, and for real, I cried about it, because my grandfather, everything to me, his opinion mattered to me about everything. Right. So I didn't want him to be disappointed, and I wanted him to understand that the first thing he said to me was, it's sex, it's drugs, it's rock and roll. That is super old, but that's what he remembers. That's what he remembers. Sex, drugs. That was the equation. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. And I'm like, no to all of it. No, I just want to sing, and it pays really well. I get to live. I get to have a good life. And so eventually, even though he didn't understand it all the way, he came to understand it. And my conversation with my grandfather was this: you teach all the time to the parents in your church, train a child up in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. This is your time to trust that what you put in me is there and it's not going anywhere. And I had an opportunity to show him that it was possible to do this for a living and not take on, a lifestyle that could be possibly dangerous or end up in my demise or an early death, or because I get involved in. I'm like, Grandpa, no, for real, we from the hood. It's people that are doing all of these things in the hood, and they're not famous. So it's a choice, no matter what you do with your life, no matter what you do for a living, it's a choice. And so I was able to have that conversation. The great thing about my relationship with my grandfather is that I was the grandchild that could have any conversation with him, because I was a researcher and I would always come to him with a whole list of facts.
So you had the facts.
Oh my God. Yeah. I knew that if I could just lay it all out and 1 + 1 = 2, then he would say, okay, I might not like it, but I'll pray for you. And that's what he did. That's what he did.
And I respect your work ethic because so we're going to discuss that one time you didn't take a lunch break while everyone else did. Instead, you went on that piano
Yeah.
and you rehearsed, and an icon walked in and heard your beautiful voice. So tell us
Yeah.
about that story.
That was really more so about morning sickness all day long. But
Mhm.
literally, so my whole life, whenever we had empty time, we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have a lot of things. When my sisters and I were young and we were in the projects in Edgemere, there was a lot going on. So obviously you're talking about the 70s, the 80s,
Yeah.
and the projects in New York City, like crack, everything was crazy. And so if there was too much going on, if it was like noisy, and if we were hearing sirens and that kind of thing to drown out the sound, my mother would tell us, y'all start singing something. So all of the empty spaces in our day were never empty because if we weren't cleaning or doing homework, my mother would say, sing. And so we spent all void time singing in the house. There were no empty moments. And so at this particular rehearsal for the Grammy Awards, it was for Mariah Carey, and I was a part of a choir. I was first trimester pregnant with my son,
Mhm.
18 years old, and there were 4 people on the planet that knew I was pregnant. My doctor, my sister, me, and my boyfriend at the time, who I eventually married. Nobody else knew that I was pregnant. And I was so sick. And so we had been in this rehearsal and they sent the choir on a break, and me smelling food, looking at food, it was about to
Yeah.
be all day.
Nauseous. Yeah.
So I didn't leave the rehearsal room. I stayed in the rehearsal room when everybody went to go eat. And I was in there by myself and sat at the piano with a friend, and he started playing. I started singing, and Mariah walked in the room with Trey Lorenz and with Tommy Mottola and with Randy Hoffman, who was her manager at the time. And so what happened was I realized they were behind me. So I got up and walked away from the piano because that wasn't the point of it. Like I literally was just trying
Right.
to pass time and not puke my lungs up. And so that was how I was heard. And at the end of that rehearsal, Mariah was very shy. She sent Trey over to me, Trey Lorenz,
Mhm.
and she had told him, go over there and talk to that girl and see if you can get her to sing again. And so that's literally how it happened. And I was like, no, I can't sing for you. Like, there's all these people in here. I ain't trying to do that.
Yeah.
But in the end, Trey and I ended up back at the piano, and he was just really good. Trey's silly. He's silly. We started singing together, and she was kind of ducking behind this pole and trying to look around to hear. And then she just walked over and she started talking to me. And then Tommy came over with her and Randy came over with her. And it was like the most weird moment. And I was nervous and nauseous and all these things. It was like the perfect cocktail of, I'm surprised I didn't yak in the moment, but that's literally how it happened. And that day, both Tommy and Randy asked me if I would be interested in doing some work with them, with her. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Okay. I didn't think they were
Yeah.
telling the truth. I didn't think they were telling the truth. But lo and behold, less than a month later, I was on a stage with Mariah Carey recording MTV Unplugged.
Wow. So you've done background for Mariah Carey,
Yes.
Biggie, everybody in the industry, and
Yes,
then
sir.
you segued and you became a solo artist, and you released your debut album, Soul of a Woman.
Yes.
How was the transition?
I, I tell people I got bullied into doing that, and it's a funny story. So, as a songwriter, as a background singer, as a vocal producer, I was doing a lot of the writing and singing out of the bad boy camp. And in this particular instance, I'd written for so many people over there. Ronald Isley was coming in to work with Puff. He had this new album after all of these years that was coming out, Mission to Please, and they were looking to introduce him to keep that pattern going. He had been introduced to a new generation through the Mr. Big series with
Yep.
R. Kelly, and so they were trying to take some of his love songs to do these mixes of them where they would work in the club so that younger kids would get to know who Ronald Isley was. So
Yep.
obviously in the 90s, if that's the sound that you wanted, you went and you got Puff to do it.
Exactly.
So Puff was brought in by Island Black Music to do this mix of a song for Ronald Isley that included 112 and Lil' Kim on this song. But Puff said, I need you to write it because I need to make sure,
Okay.
like, so it had to have that, but it still needed to make sense for Ronald Isley. So he needed to make sure that it still was a song to be sung and had melodies so he could follow along. So he enlisted me to write the song. And the day that Ronald Isley was coming to the studio to record it, he didn't even tell me. I had just finished a
Wow.
writing session for Aaliyah with one of the producers over there, some other stuff I was doing that day. I was on my way out the door. Puff stopped me and he was like, listen, I got Ronald Isley coming to the studio and you got to get this song done and blah. And I'm like, okay, so when is he coming? He's like, he's on his way now. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I got the track. I promise you it's simple. It doesn't need to be, it's because it's for the club. I need you to write it. So Ronald Isley was probably stuck in traffic for a little over an hour trying to get from the hotel to the studio in Manhattan. And I wrote the song while he was sitting in traffic. So when he's walking through the door, I'm about to leave. He said, no, you have to stay and cut his vocals. I said, I can't cut vocals on Ronald Isley. He's a legend. And Puff said, well, I can't cut vocals on Ronald Isley because I can't sing. What I look like trying to tell him, he said, what I look like trying to tell him how to sing a note. I don't know how to sing. I'm like, I can't. He was like, you have to. You wrote the song. You're the only one that knows it. So I ended up being Ronald Isley's vocal producer that day. And that's how I met him. And while I was working with him in the session that day, he said to me, he was like, so what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, what are you doing? Like, you're here. I see you writing. I see you. So what are you doing? I'm like, writing, singing background. You know, that's what I do. And he said, no, you need to be making your own records. And I was like, nah, like the industry don't rock with girls like me. Like, I'm cool. I'm a writer. It's cool. I travel with people. I'm a background singer. I'm having fun. And he said, no, you got to make your own records. I didn't agree with it. We exchanged information that day. We kept in touch. This was 1996. And if you remember, the Olympic Games, the Summer Games were in Atlanta in 1996 that year.
Oh, yes, it was.
And Ronald Isley did opening night for the Olympic Games in Atlanta. That was the beginning of his tour. His first night was in Atlanta. So the night before his opening night in Atlanta, he called me. We had been keeping in touch. So I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing, Ronald? He's like, hey, I got an emergency. He said, my tour starts tomorrow, and I just fired one of my background singers, and I need a background singer, and I need you to come out on the road with me. And I'm like, okay, so when is it? He said, tomorrow. I was like, I can't leave. I got kids. I got 2 toddlers at home. I'm like, I can't leave. He said, you have to. You can't leave. Like, he put this whole guilt trip on. You can't leave me stuck. I'm like, stuck. I can't. Well, needless to say, like 12 hours later, I had a packed bag. And I was on a plane on my way to Atlanta. No rehearsal. He had been in rehearsal for a month. No rehearsal. I did a sound check with him that day and got on stage with him for the first time that night as a background singer. He did a 2.5-hour set because he's got catalog forever.
Right.
So literally, I was learning the music as the show was happening. And that was night number 1. Night number 2 was the Strand Theater in Boston. We got on the buses immediately. It was a long drive from Atlanta to Boston. And at the end of the show, he broke it down. He starts singing Voyage to Atlantis. He calls Angela Winbush, who he was married to at the time, out. She comes out and she sings Smile. She sings Angel. And when she finishes, he says, Kelly, come here. And I'm looking at him like, what is he doing?
He puts you on the spot.
And he calls me out to the middle of the stage and he starts singing Love Don't Live Here Anymore by Rose Royce. And then he looked at me and he handed me the microphone and he said, sing. And my eyes got big and I was like, what are you doing? He said, sing. So I start singing. The audience goes crazy. And he takes the microphone back from me and he says, ladies and gentlemen, you just met my new artist, Kelly Price. We did not have the discussion. He bullied me. He bullied me. And so it was a long year of you need to do this while I was on the road with them. But he convinced me that it could be done. I had really allowed myself to fall into the belief that there was no place for girls that looked like me in the business because it's what I'd been told.
And you broke that barrier.
And thank God that, he stayed in my ear. Like we had the conversation. I would break down in tears talking to him. And Ronald said to me, Kelly, I don't care if you were 12, I'm quoting him. I don't care if you were 1,200 pounds and blue. He said, when you open your mouth, people are going to stop to listen. He said, you've written for me. You've written for Brian McKnight. You've written for all these people. Aretha, he said, do for yourself what you've done for all of us. They won't have a choice but to stop and listen. He said, I believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself. And it changed my life. It changed my life. It really, really changed my life. Because I still, even once the record came out, I would love to hear people say, girl, you representing for the big girls and you giving us our confidence. I didn't have the confidence. He stayed in my ear. He was like, you got to walk around like you know you the shit. I don't care what you feel. You got to, until you believe it, you got to walk around and know, because people are looking at you. The women that look like you need representation, and they haven't had it because it wasn't about me. I've been told prior to that, oh, you can do gospel, you can do opera, you can do house music, but to do R&B or pop music and to have the audacity to say that I can be looked at as beautiful, not necessarily a sex symbol, but I can be positioned as someone desirable and beautiful inside of amazing love songs. I was not supposed to have the audacity to do that. And so forward to 2020, there is a Lizzo who will get up and say, this is what it is, and while you tripping, you better watch your dude, because I might just snatch him.
Exactly.
It's because of those days.
Right.
You know, it was because of an insistence of a Ronald Isley, of a Hiram Hicks, who stayed in my face when I was crying in their office, like, I can't do this, I can't. And they were saying, no, yes, you can. You're beautiful. So what? You a big girl. It's more women in the world, especially in our community, that look like you than look like them. You represent us. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. So shout out to them. That was my journey, and so many things in between. But from beginning to the point of where I said yes and made the record, it was because, not even so much because I believed in me, because I didn't. I had heard it for too many years that I was not the type. And so, they were like, no, you're going to make this record and you're going to go out there and you're going to be bold about it. And you're going to be, and so everything from that point, they were like, the songs you have, the voice you have, you got to let us convince you that you can be this beautiful example of a real woman with some weight and some curves and some, and so I cried a lot of the way, but I did it.
Well, your first album, actually your first single, you broke a Billboard record because your first single, Friend of Mine. So your single reached #1 on Billboard without a video to push it.
Without a video. It was the first
without
time
a video.
We made music history. We made music history that for the first time since videos had become like a part of that thing, that a song went to #1 with no video. And this whole ingenious marketing plan that was discussed with Team Kelly, it was Ronald, it was Hiram, it was Island Black Records, it was, and we decided to sit the music in front of them. People said, oh, they scared for people to see what she looks like. We flipped it. That's not what it was. Yep. They said, we want to prove that real lyrics and real singing will outsell no matter what. And so we put it out there. We went to #1. We slid down from #1, shot the video, put the video out, and next thing we know, we went back to #1 a second time. We were like, what is happening right now? It was an absolute blessing. It was an absolute blessing. And to this day, I think about it, and I'm really just grateful. I'm really just grateful. I'm a project chick from New York who is a church girl and a preacher's kid. And I came from really, really humble beginnings. And you know, to go from waiting in line for block cheese and powdered milk to traveling the world and being able to sing about life and love and spread, you know, just all of it through music. I could have never dreamed it. I could have never imagined it.
So it's one thing to record with Whitney Houston, but to build an actual friendship with Whitney, that's epic. How did that happen?
That happened because of Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston, as she told me this story, was driving down New Jersey Turnpike one day and heard, you know, this doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. She was a friend. And like, she says, girl, I almost crashed into the median of the Jersey Turnpike. She said, I heard this voice. And first of all, I knew you were straight church. That's what she said, straight church. But she sent people, she was like, y'all got to find this girl. At the time, it was the music. You just showed the cover. It was a logo. There were no photos. There were no images. There was nothing. I hadn't been on television. She sent her people out, find this girl. Who is she? Because they would play the song in the middle of a mix. So my name, a lot of times, wasn't even being announced. People didn't even know the name. They just knew they heard this song. she sent her people looking for me. And that's how I met Whitney Houston. So when it was time for Soul of a Woman to come out, literally, we released the record the day after her birthday. And so back then, if you recall, music came out on Tuesday, not
Yep,
Friday.
every
So if you
Tuesday
were
I was
going to
at that
do,
record store.
exactly. So if you were going to do an album release party, you would either do it on Monday night, the night before the record came out, or you would do it on Tuesday night, the day the record came out. And so we went with a Monday night, which it also ended up being her birthday party. So we were in the city at the same time. She invited me to her birthday party. I invited her to my album release party, but her party had already been planned, and so had mine. So we didn't get a chance to party with each other that night because we had events happening at the same time. But shortly thereafter, we were able to get together and have that first conversation, and it was amazing. Next thing I know, I'm being invited to do this song with her and Faith. And we went to New Jersey. We were out at her estate. She had a second home that was on the property, and inside of this house, literally, it was gutted, and it was a studio. And so we were there recording. There were cameras there all day long. We were all there, like literally. It was like the making of. I really wish that they would release that, because there were cameras all day, us in hair and makeup and getting ready, hearing the song together for the first time, all of it. Somebody really needs to release that footage. It was a surreal day for me. And I was like, I felt like Cinderella at a ball, because I'm looking at this woman who I love. I'm at her house. We're learning this song together. And she's talking to me like we homegirls that grew up together. And I'm looking and I'm like, yeah, okay. But inside, I am like, what is happening right now? It was an epic day. Faith and I already knew each other. And the friendship really developed. She became my sister. She talked to me about everything, life, growing up, church, trying to navigate this business the right way, not getting caught up in the wrong stuff, making sure that I make the right decisions. She let me know, when you're a superstar, you can have anything you want. Make sure you ask for the right things. Don't let people trip you up. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, because it'll destroy you. Like she was that one. We had a very honest relationship with each other. When she was battling with drugs, when she was clean, we had a very honest relationship with each other. She had an amazing ability to compartmentalize. So the Whitney that I knew was the Whitney that I knew. I can't speak for who somebody else knew, but we talked about everything. The kids, we talked about being married inside of this business. Like we talked to each other about our marriages. Like literally, she said to me, it's hard to be married in this business, Kelly. The only thing I'll tell you is, if your marriage doesn't make it, don't let it be because you let the business dictate what happened with your relationship. If y'all don't make it, let it be because y'all don't make it. Don't let it be because you let the business get inside your house. And so those are the kind of things that she talked to me about. She talked to me about the struggle. I loved her. I loved her from my soul, and she loved me from her soul. And so it was very, just a bunch of words. It was eerie. It was even maybe poetic justice to a degree. All of it, just to know that right before she died, that we were together. That night was really special for me, because after many, many years of not making music, many, many years in which I contemplated not coming back to the business, because the business was a hurtful place. And I got tired of having to put on the face and smile in the faces of people who I knew didn't mean me any good. They didn't really care about me. They didn't care about my family. They didn't care whether or not my family made it or not. Like, they didn't care. And so it was a long period of time before I came back. And when I did come back, she insisted on being with me to celebrate this wonderful body of music that came out through the Kelly Project. And then literally, in terms of recognition by my peers and awards committees, it was my most celebrated. It didn't, Kelly was independent, so it didn't sell like the first albums did, but it literally was the most acclaimed record in terms of recognition by the Academy. We, at the end of that project, we'd had 4 or 5 Grammy nominations, which is the most that I'd ever had at any one time. And so that night we talked, we hugged, we laughed, we cried. She told me she was proud of me. She told me how much she loved me. She told me that she was proud because watching me, she could see that I did what she told me to do. I listened to what she said. I had been living through my own personal hell, but I didn't let the business consume me to the degree that my decisions were based on needing to be accepted by people who necessarily didn't care in the end what happened to Kelly. And so she was my sister in real life. And I celebrated her all the way to the end. And I still celebrate her. I can't do a concert without having my Whitney moment and celebrating her because she deserves it. I tell people all the time, and allow me to just, if I can go in this direction.
Oh, no.
I tell people all the time that as a people and as a culture, we have to do better about celebrating our own. It doesn't mean that we don't have faults and things that lie inside of our communities. But when I look at Elvis, when I look at Amy Winehouse, let's just call a spade a spade. When I look at Elvis, when I look at Amy Winehouse, when we look at Marilyn Monroe, when we look at all of these different people who had their struggles, everybody knew it. The world knew it.
Yeah.
But their culture, their communities didn't come out and destroy them when they died. Yeah. They praised them. They sent their records back to #1. They built museums and people pay to go walk through them to see their memorabilia. So it's not that we deny the struggles that she had, but for real, the struggle that she had, somebody in every one of our families had.
At times, we can be our worst enemies.
Absolutely. We have to do better. I'm not getting ready to tear her down, and I'm not getting ready to let you do it either, because we're still celebrating people from other cultures that had the same struggle. We got to do better about our own. You can't talk about her in a negative way around me. I'm not having it. I'm not having it.
And I commend you for that. Yep.
Yes.
So as artists, two things usually happen.
Yes.
There's a record that was passed on to you, and usually artists will say, I don't want to record it because there's a feeling that says, well, I don't like it, but they end up recording it and it ends up being a #1 hit. Yes. Has that happened to you?
Gosh, I really haven't had that experience because I love music, and I music is me. Like when I say that, I mean, when I write or even listen to music, I can literally close my eyes and get lost in every chord, in every progression. What I can say is I almost passed on a song that I actually did record. And rest in peace, Bob Arrington. He was the composer and the songwriter for He Proposed. He actually died a couple of weeks ago as a result of this pandemic that we're living through right now. And because I was so adamant about writing my own music, I learned early in the game, like, you want to be a part of the structure of your music so you can shape not just your sound, but financially and as a business move, you need to be a part of that structure when it comes to your business so you can control your music as well. This young writer out of Jersey, he was a preacher's kid. He was being managed by JoJo Brim at the time, who was at Def Jam. I was with Def Jam when Island Black shut down. I got, moved over to Def Jam. And he said he had this song by this young writer that was amazing, and it was a love song, and it was beautiful. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, we can write together, but I'm not getting ready to take a song from somebody. If he wants to write, that's fine. He was like, no, I need you to just listen to it. If you listen to it, you'll understand what I'm saying. Lo and behold, he proposed for me, and I'm like, yeah, I got to do that.
And that was on the Mirror Mirror album?
That was He Proposed was on the Priceless album, actually.
Yes.
And it was Grammy nominated. And the funny thing about it is when I got nominated for that Grammy, I told myself, you definitely not winning this one, because it was I already knew it. It was for Best R&B Performance. And I was in the category with Aretha Franklin. I was like, boo, you ain't got a shot, but hello, you made the cut. So I was happy about that. Yeah. So, but rest in peace, Bob Arrington. He transitioned a couple of weeks ago. And so, but the great thing is that his music lives on. God bless his wife and his daughters and his parents. They actually are in Jersey pastoring, and all the way up until he died, he was serving his parents as minister of music for their church.
Okay. So with summer being around the corner and you growing up in the church, you are one of the hosts on BET's on Sunday's Best. So
Yes.
what can we expect this season?
So this season, oh my, first and foremost, let me tell you something. These children sing for blood. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
They sing for absolute blood. We all know, first of all, when you're growing up in the church, it's not even about the nuance and all of that stuff. What the kids want you to do, the saints want you to come and sing and make them do backflips, and they need to feel the spirit when you're done. So no doubt, every last one of these singers are amazing in their own right. Being a part of Sunday's Best is an opportunity to pour into them, to give them some wisdom, and to help shape their artistry. Being a singer and being an artist is not necessarily the same thing. The church is full of good singers, but becoming an artist is necessary in order to navigate this business and to know. So we have an opportunity to do that. What you will see, without doubt, without failure, is the shaping of artists. And so I'm excited about it. The singing is amazing. Like, it blesses my soul. I'll be hollering at the end of every song just about, because it's great music. It's great singing. But I was really happy when I was asked to be a part of it. It was reimagined and brought back after a 4-year hiatus. The decision was made to bring the show back. It was one of the highest rated shows ever on the network. And they brought it back with Jesse Collins, who completely reimagined the show. And if anybody got a chance to see it in season 9, the look of it is different. It's just clean. It's upgraded. It's beautiful. And the talent is second to none. So we have a chance to do that again in season 10. It's coming back. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. And so this year I decided, last year kind of caught me off guard. I was like, okay. And then they were like, well, the judges are going to do songs in the finale. I had an opportunity to sing I Am Still Here by Dorinda Clark. That's so, like, that's me. Like, I'm a baby Clark. And so this year I decided that I wanted to have a piece of original music. I've only recorded one full-length gospel project throughout my career. I did it live back home in New York in 2005 and released it in 2006. And so I decided that I wanted to do something original this year. And so for this season, I actually have a piece of music that is coming out in the gospel category that I wrote. And yeah, you can get it this week on iTunes and Google Music, and actually all digital outlets. And so I'm excited about that. It's a timely song. I had no idea how timely it would be right now, because I had no idea that we would be living through what we're living through as a global society right now. Right. But the name of the song is What I Need, and it's a prayer that I wrote a few years ago.
Which came out today.
Yes. Yep. And so excited about it. Going back and listening to it again, dealing with what we're dealing with as a society. But then also we're just dealing with, what my family is dealing with right now, losing my grandfather. It's a soothing piece of music that I actually now have the opportunity to use to soothe my own soul. And so I wanted to do that for the world.
Okay. So tell us about Unsung that's dropping on May the 28th.
Unsung, again, y'all know me with these songs, Unsung is a song about a life unlived, literally. And so the parallel to Unsung, again, going back to what you said, is there a song that you ever passed up on and it was a missed opportunity? So Unsung, that's really what the song is about, missed opportunities, but inside of a relationship, because I couldn't see to take this person back or to allow them in my life for whatever reason. I have to now live the rest of my life with these feelings of unsung. Some of the words are my unlaughed laugh, my unloved love. So all of these parallels to a song Unsung, which sometimes fear can keep you from not living life. Like, you're existing, you're here, you wake up every day, you're breathing just like every other living organism or every other human being, but you're not living because you're afraid or, whatever the case may be. So it's an ode to that, and an awakening of understanding how we can limit ourselves if we choose that to be cautious is better than to take the plunge. And so sometimes you do err on the side of caution, but sometimes you don't. Like, I would rather try and fail than come to the end of my life and miss out on something amazing because I was too afraid to give it a try, you know? So that's what Unsung is. That's what Unsung is. And it's actually the single. The single will come, it's coming out. I went with tradition for Unsung. The
Oh,
single will
okay.
be out the Friday before Mother's Day.
Friday before Mother's Day.
The
Okay.
single will, yes.
So people are saying that R&B is on life support right now. What's your take on that?
R&B is not on life support. R&B has been redefined so many times throughout the years. And I say that from an educated standpoint, being that what we're hearing is that new definitions being given to R&B music, which is the reason why you're hearing songs that traditionally wouldn't be in an R&B category sit inside of those R&B categories. I dare not say life support. I say R&B is, well, I'll compare it to my grandfather. Long living, and never going anywhere because it's solid and it has a real foundation. So it's kind of hard to say that something is, I know what people mean to say, but at the end of the day, when the fad changes again and they're trying to redefine it again, songs like Love and Happiness will still be here. That's the reason why Al Green can tour and fill up a venue with people, because his music has substance and it has qualities in it, from the lyrics to the sounds to the live instrumentation, that will always matter in the lives of people who love real music. So I think it's not necessarily life support. Perhaps it's the tortoise and the hare. It's
Oh,
it's
I like
it's
that.
yeah, it's not a marathon. Or it is a marathon. Maybe we're running, and we're running the race. We're not sprinting. I'm not trying to get there first. I'm just going to get there, and you'll get there quickly.
Yeah.
But once you finish the race is finished. If I pace myself and I take my time, I'm still in it, and I'm exposed to all of it, and I still get all the feels, and people still get all the feels from me. So it's really, it's not life support. It's tortoise and hare. I heard in an interview many years ago, and I thought it was brilliantly spoken by Luther Vandross. It was when the new wave of boy bands were coming along, and I think an interviewer, really, he was trying to be funny. He says to Luther Vandross, "So how do you feel when you see groups like Backstreet come along, and all of these kids come along, and you've been here forever, and you make this wonderful music, and they go diamond, and you've never sold diamond?" This is what this interviewer says to Luther Vandross, and Luther Vandross says, "Well, I don't feel any kind of way." He said, "I'd rather be here and do 1 million records every time than do diamond once, and 15 years down the road, where am I?" And that wasn't a slight to that era, but every Luther Vandross release lives in our hearts and in our music libraries, because he never went anywhere. He's been gone for years now, but his music is never going anywhere. It wasn't period pieces. It was solid music that will always resonate with our lives and in our hearts, and it's never going anywhere. So that's kind of my feel on it. I learned from that generation. I watched Luther. I watched Patti LaBelle. I watched Gladys Knight. I watched Aretha Franklin. I had the opportunity to live in the house of Mariah Carey and watch her work ethic. She, in the studio, absolute beast. Like, between her and being in the studio for Puff Daddy Productions that I wrote for, I learned how to be a producer. I learned a work ethic that is second to none. People don't work like that anymore. We lived in the studio, took naps at the studio, got up and finished what we started. And so it's a beautiful thing. I feel like artists like me, artists like Deborah Cox, artists like Faith Evans, artists like Tamia, we have the opportunity to do what keeps us relevant to today, but also make sure that we don't lose the standard of Aretha Franklin, of Anita Baker, of Gladys Knight, of Patti LaBelle, of Luther Vandross, of Peebo Bryson, of those guys, James Ingram. Their music is never going anywhere. And I would much rather have my name listed among those whose songs will be sung 100 years from now than those who maybe had a time where their music hit because it had all the sounds and the feels of today, but it won't translate tomorrow.
If you could work with one artist that's currently out right now, who would it be?
Oh, my baby, her
Her?
music official.
Oh,
To me, she is everything today with all of the discipline of yesterday.
oh wow.
For sure. Love her to life. She is a walking instrument. Literally, she's a walking instrument.
Okay.
Yes.
So if there was to be a Kelly Price biopic, would you hold anything out, or will it be raw and uncut?
It would be raw and uncut. It's necessary to tell my story. It's not like I think it's a waste to tell it if you're not going to tell it all. You have to do it. You have to resolve that you're going to just say everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's all a part of the making of who we are. And I've, at this stage of life, I turned 47. What's today's date? I turned 47 10 days ago. And at this
Happy
point,
belated birthday.
thank you. At this stage of life, I fully commit to no wasted experiences. Even the ones that caused me a lot of pain, no wasted experiences. Because if it didn't do anything else, it taught me what I will never do again.
So, so before we wrap up, you've experienced the bad, the good, the ugly. So for an up and coming artist, what advice would you give them?
You have to commit to the soul of what you say you want to do. Always remember why you said you wanted to do this. Now, if you wanted to do it because you wanted to be iced out and in a nice ride, I don't know how that's going to help you when the road gets rough. But if you want to do it because you can't live without expressing yourself through your music, you have to always commit to keeping that feeling right here, and in your gut. Because the days are going to come when the music business is not matching up to the music. And when the music business does not match the music, if you don't love it, you're going to walk away from it. I've always loved it, even in the times when I felt like I didn't want to love it anymore, because it was at the center of my heart, because it lived in my soul. Even when I told myself I was walking away, I couldn't walk away from it. I love it. It's been my therapy. It connects me with the world. And it's people tell me it's blessed them, but I've been blessed through the blessing that the music has been to them. When I know that my heart was breaking and I wrote about it and I sang about it and somebody halfway around the world heard it and they were living the same thing and they decided that life was still worth living because of this piece of music that I did, that blesses me more than anything. And so I would tell the artist, know your business too. Like those are the two things. You got to be in it. And you got to love the music more than you love the business, because the business is not going to love you always. Wow. But what you got to make sure you do is know the business, because, if you're around people that know the business and you don't know it, that's a cocktail for bankruptcy. That's a cocktail from having all your stuff stolen. And we all have that story, even for the ones of us that you might not have heard it. I've lived through it. We've all lived through it because people knew more about the business than we knew. And I consider myself to be well-versed in the music, but when people, that's all they do is crunch numbers, they know how to make them books look right, even when they're not right. So you have to be intentional about knowing the business and check the people who are handling your business, and then have a check. Here I am. Okay. Yep, they shut us down. Yes. So, that's what I was saying. Just they got to stay on. You have to, as an artist, stay on top of your business. And trust me, the music business is the creative killer. But you have to make time to deal with the business side of it. And don't be afraid to check. Don't be afraid to check the people who are around you, because at the end of the day, it's your name. It's your, and I've learned that I've learned that the hard way. You know, as artists, sometimes we definitely need a layer of protection between us and the outside world. But, you know, when you give someone else the power to do all of the talking for you, make all of the decisions for you, and something goes wrong and there's a lawsuit, they don't sue the person who's talking for you, they sue you.
Oh yeah.
And ask me how I know. So the lesson learned is it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. So listen, if somebody wants to assign a name that's not so pleasant to me because I'm gonna check the people who are around me, then I'll wear that, and I'll wear it earnestly, because it's crazy to have somebody, you do all the talking, you're the one that's in charge, but when it doesn't go right and they want to sue somebody, they're not suing you, they're
No,
suing me.
you.
They're suing me. So literally at this stage of my life, I am involved in everything. There is no such thing as somebody else is doing all of the talking for Kelly. That can never happen again, because I have found myself on the wrong side of a lawsuit because of somebody else who was talking for me. So I know that it feels weird. It feels awkward. And literally, I've seen other artists do it. I've seen other artists get more involved. I remember a few years back when Anita Baker started getting more involved, and she was literally like talking to people on the other side. And from the older generation of artists, sometimes it feels a little taboo. But you get sued enough times, you get somebody dragging you into court enough times over something someone else did,
Exactly.
that you appointed as your spokesperson, you either going to decide that you're going to keep letting that happen, or you're going to step in and be involved. And so for me right now, there is no management that takes place that I'm not involved in. I prefer to have a team around me of people who can help me navigate through the day. But since the responsibility is mine, the decision is mine, and so is the conversation.
10 years from now, where do you see Kelly Price?
Producing television and film.
So no singing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We know that it all goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes hand in hand. The music is never going anywhere. But I have literally for years now been creating content, and there's so much content in my like hard drives and laptops and all of this stuff. I am just like overloaded with content. And now is that time with all of these digital outlets and so many opportunities to show the other sides of me. I don't consider myself a songwriter. I consider myself a writer. And so I have books in my computer. I have screenplays in my computer. I have television show ideas with full episodes written in my computer.
So how soon can we see those?
So like, I'm really hoping that within the next 18 months, I'll have a piece of original material out there that I've created. And now with digital opportunities prevailing, why not? And I'm to the point where I tell myself, if it doesn't land on Hulu or Netflix or Apple TV, I have a YouTube channel. So there are so many outlets for it. It's just about getting it out there. And a lot of it is funny. And to a degree, all of it is me. My life, I've compartmentalized, and I've made comedy pieces out of it. I've made dramatic pieces out of it. Musical pieces. It's all there. So I'm excited about putting that out there. I have a cookbook that's been sitting in my computer for I don't know how long that I need to put out. That's my other love. And so just to release all of it, and to know that when I leave here, that I'm going to leave here an empty shell, because I would have given the world everything that was in me. I'm leaving. When I go to the grave, I'm going to the grave empty. I plan on putting everything out before I go.
Okay.
Yes.
So for your fans that are watching this interview right now, what would you like to say to them?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say, guys, I love you. We are going to get through this. I don't care if you're watching in Africa, in Brazil, in the United States. We're living in crazy, wild, uncertain times. But I've been telling this to myself as well as anybody else that I've spoken to. If this is not how you know your story is supposed to end, then plan to be here for a very long time. Be smart, be safe, wash your hands, stop going to people's houses, stop letting people in your house.
Yep.
Take this seriously, so you can live here and be here 50 years from now to tell the next generation what it was like to live through this time. The thing about it is when my grandparents lived through all of this stuff, flu epidemics, all of this kind of stuff. They lived to tell about it. Let's be smart. Let's be intentional so that 40, 50, 60 years from now, we're here to tell about it. I want everybody to know you are loved. You are not in this alone. I think it's important for people to know now that if you're at home and you're social distancing or physical distancing and you're by yourself, keep a healthy mindset. Don't watch the news all day. I made that mistake for the first few days.
That's what I do.
Look at something, yeah. Look at something funny on purpose. Watch mindless television. Watch something that's going to make you laugh. Stay in touch with people. FaceTime people. Zoom with people. Skype with people. Talk. Do something silly. Do something that you never ever thought you would do before. But be intentional about keeping your mind engaged and stay healthy throughout this time. It's strange. I'm separated from my family because I'm here and we're all in different places, but I want to see them again. So I'm going to be smart. I'm going to be smart about how I handle this time. So really, that's what I want to tell everybody. The music is there. Yes, go get it. That's not going anywhere. But I really just want to extend love to everybody. I want you to know that you are loved. There's somebody out there that loves you. You deserve to be here for a long time. So be smart. Follow these rules. Because I'm looking forward to the day when we got this thing whooped so we can go back to being in venues and sharing the love through the music and back to going to church and being able to have house parties again.
Right.
And all, like we, you know, that's who we are. We need to commune with each other. This is a temporary inconvenience for a permanent solution. So let's be wise and get on the other side of this thing so we can start being in each other's faces again.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I really love you. And I appreciate you for this. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you so much.
You're
God
welcome.
bless you guys. What I need is out there now. Unsung is coming out the Friday before Mother's Day. God bless you guys. Enjoy the music. Please listen to it. Tell me how you feel about it. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes. And happy early Mother's Day, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care. Be safe.
Love you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.